You're watching NFL Daily. Before we get into today's show, I do want to have a little quick programming announcement for you guys that's not exactly NFL related. We will be live for the World Series here on the Chat Sports YouTube channel. Dodgers versus Yankees, first pitch on Friday. We'll be live around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. My boy Jack Lotteray's got you covered. So do not miss out for a little Dodgers-Yankees World Series watch party. Game 1 gets going on Friday. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. Over now to the rest of our previously planned NFL coverage. Myles Garrett. The trade rumors are here. I think at least in part to the hopes, desires, dreams of other fan bases and other NFL teams, and kind of kick-started by Albert Breer. I don't think he meant to do it this way, but you know how the game of telephone goes with the aggregators. It goes from teams called to Myles Garrett trade going to happen? Here's what Albert Breer actually wrote about the Browns in particular. Speaking of trades, the Browns will get phone calls now based on their 1-6 record and the fact that they just offloaded Amari Cooper. I don't think they'll move Myles Garrett, but some fishing has taken place. Anyone can call Denzel Ward or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Somehow that got turned into, wow, Browns might trade Myles Garrett. That's not what Breer wrote. In fact, he literally said it's probably not going to happen, but teams are going to call because that's how teams do business. I would be pretty darn shocked if a trade happened. And I think it would be, even though he's been a bit banged up here, not as good as he's been in years past, I think it would be wildly expensive for a team to go out and acquire Myles Garrett. You can think about what's happened over the years with some of the highly expensive, in terms of trade cost, big-time deals. Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey stands out, right? 2 firsts and a 4th. I don't even think that's the baseline for a Myles Garrett trade. I think you have to exceed that by at least an early round 2 pick. I don't think they're going to give him away for free. They're not going to give him away for nothing. This has been one of the best football players in the NFL over the last several seasons. And there's 2 players right now in football who have gotten double-digit sacks over the last 4 years. And Garrett's off to a slower start. It doesn't help his offense is so bad and the changes aren't that great. But he's still mostly trending towards being around that double-digit sack mark, which he's done every year of his NFL career, except for his rookie season when he played in 11 games. Like, if you're starting a list of best defensive players in football, still not quite yet 30-year-old Myles Garrett, doesn't even turn 29 until December. If he ain't number 1, he's number 2 or number 3 on that list. Even with the Browns kind of rebuilding, retooling here, Garrett's like the linchpin of that defense when they pay him again, probably this upcoming offseason. So I don't think a trade happens. With that in mind, what is the % chance the Browns trade Myles Garrett? I think it's a low number, but I want to hear from you guys. So let me know in the comments section, the pinned comment actually, of today's show, especially if that ad comes here on YouTube. Let's talk Cooper Kupp. Now, different reports here. We'll kind of combine Ian Report and Dianna Russini here. That Kupp has drawn trade interest, and the Rams are more open to it than it would have previously been thought. Here's what Ian Rappaport reported before the Sunday games got going. Ian wrote, sources say during a frenzy of receiver calls that teams began calling the Rams to inquire about the status of Cooper Kupp. The, at the time, 1-4 Rams have not turned the page of 2025, and even considering a trade for Kupp would be complicated and multifaceted. But the interest from teams is there, thanks in part to some online speculation that has happened since the season began. Plenty of teams doing their research on receivers have him on that list. Now, today, this has developed a little bit differently than what Rapp had previously reported. Dianna Russini came crashing onto everyone's timelines with this report. The Rams have called multiple teams about trading former Super Bowl MVP Cooper Kupp. Sources tell me Mike Silver and Jordan Rodriguez, those are the other athletic writers. The Rams have indicated a willingness to take on some of the 2024 salary, and are seeking a second-round pick. So similar to the Davante Adams trade, but this time they're eating some money to get a better draft pick back. Also of note, they called them. That's noteworthy. When the team with the players making the calls, that's an indication there's actually some interest in moving on there. We'll spend some more time on this here in just a second. But will the Rams trade Cooper Kupp? Y for yes, N for no. Sound off for me. Where else but the comment section of today's show. Now, Cooper Kupp has been banged up this year. The 2 games he played, he was pretty good, though. I think the biggest issue you have with Cooper Kupp is, can the guy stay healthy? When he has been out there, he's been one of the better receivers in football. At his age, at his injury history, you're probably not realistically going to get that magical 2021 campaign. Can you get 1,000-yard fringe receiver in kind of that power slot mold as he just turned 31 back in June? Maybe. Now, before the proration kicks in, and I want to make note here, proration means that you don't have to pay what has already been paid, right? It's about a $6 million difference between what the new team would owe already and the cap savings. So, call it $9-ish million is what's left for a new team to pay him this year, and 26 or 14 in savings from the Rams. They could adjust that number by the Rams eating some of it. What the Cooper Kupp contract is coming up is, $9 million owed by the new team after proration. Maybe less if the Rams eat some of that money. It's not that bad, frankly. The new team would owe $20 million in 2025, $5 million of which is guaranteed. That's it. That's actually very doable from a contract perspective, and even make it a, brief 1-year, 2-year extension type of deal. You can absolutely make that work. So with the Rams also willing to eat money if that report is accurate, there's a real chance Cooper Kupp ends up getting traded before this year's NFL trade deadline. Now, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. It is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can do that with as little as 4 correct picks. It is the best way to get in on action, or get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. They also have an injury insurance policy. So if your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets hurt, player goes down the first half, does not return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play 5 and take advantage of one of their free squares. Anthony Edwards, more than a half point in the season opener. That one is just too easy not to do. So again, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get that $50 instantly once you play your first $5 lineup. Of note, you don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Another surprising trade report that emerged from NFL Network, by the way, is on Garrett Wilson. That's from ESPN, excuse me. After the Davante Adams trade, NFL teams were calling the Jets like, hey, can we get Garrett Wilson from you? In what shouldn't be a surprise, the Jets were like, nah, we're good. Here's what Adam Schefter wrote. After the Davante Adams trade, a select group of NFL teams inquiring whether the Jets would be willing to trade fellow star receiver Garrett Wilson. The Jets heard from other teams but are not planning on trading him because why would they? It doesn't make sense for the Jets to trade one of their 3, 4-ish long-term offensive core pieces to add draft picks and a win now. It doesn't make any sense at all. Mike Williams, they will trade him. Has Garrett Wilson lived up to expectations so far? No. I think the general offensive issues, the quarterback play is probably a big factor in that. But offensively, it's Garrett Wilson, it's Olu Fashanu, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Breece Hall. That is their offensive core beyond this upcoming season or maybe 2 years from now, depending on when Rodgers ends up calling it a career. Like, you need him long term. In general, this is a great reminder. There are more calls placed to NFL teams than I think other people realize. I don't think people know that there's quite as many calls that get placed. Most of them end up going nowhere because, that's how it tends to go. There's not as much interest out there in trading away your best players. Teams call a lot, if only to figure out what the value is on a player that might get traded so they can judge their own roster's trade value. So name a player who you do think ends up getting traded before this year's NFL trade deadline. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Let's talk Week 7 takeaways briefly here. The Deshaun Watson injury, however you feel about it, I think this much is true. I don't think there has ever been an injury in NFL history that has garnered less sympathy than the Deshaun Watson one. I think the general reaction was not like, oh man, that's heartbreaking. It was like ranging from apathy to he got what he deserved, right? You don't want to wish injuries on anyone. For some, Watson might end up being the exception. The downside here is, well, the Browns have a tough time getting out of that contract now. I don't know if he's going to be ready for Week 1 of 2025. And if he's not ready for Week 1, the Browns have to go find a new starting caliber quarterback. That might come via the draft. He might not play in Cleveland. And if he's not going to start in Cleveland, who wants Deshaun Watson right now? Because your backup can't be a distraction. He's a distraction. His long-term outlook, even beyond the injury, is extremely murky. Let's go to Tua next up here. He is set to return. That's the hope, the plan for Miami. He sounds like he's had no symptoms as of late. Football field only. The Dolphins need him. This Dolphins offense, objectively speaking, has been absolutely terrible without Tua. They have not been able to move the football on a consistent basis at all. Like they haven't played good ball. They scored 3 points against Seattle, 12 points against Tennessee, 15 against Indy, or 50 against New England, 10 against Indy. Can't win games like that. Of course, they went 1-3 in that stretch. Now, they're still in the mix in the AFC playoff picture, so they need Tua out there. Gotta protect yourself, bud. Like I get the football attitude, leaving on the table. I get why he wants to play. I understand that. Please just don't lower your head and try to run over people. Like, gotta protect yourself, man. And the fact that he kind of didn't really acknowledge that makes me a little bit worried. Let's go to Lamar Jackson. The Ravens' reigning MVP, might be going for a third one. He and the offense are dealing right now. Lamar Jackson, I think, looks better than what he played last year when he won MVP. I think in part because maybe the contenders weren't as great last year. He lit up the Bucs defense. He had zero issues against them. For the season, he got 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got 1,810 yards. You can do the math on how many he's going to get to. He is already at 455 yards. He is almost at the 500-yard mark. Among all players, he's 11th in yards on the ground. It just so happens, number one, is his teammate Derrick Henry, who looks better than he's looked in years. I think that duo, I will give Tom Monken a lot of credit. He has found ways to make it work, even in shotgun sets with Derrick Henry and Lamar, which I was a bit worried about given Henry's history. He just keeps busting off huge chunk gains. He's averaging 6.5 yards per carry. He has been an explosive play machine. He's got 10 20-plus yard rushes this season. That is more than some NFL teams have this year. In fact, it's multiple that he has more than. Right, Dallas? Speaking of Dallas, by the way, Jerry Jones once again went on to his radio show. He wasn't wrong with some of the things that he said. Now, he didn't apologize, whatever. Among the things he had said was he, didn't think Derrick Henry would be good in Dallas. They've got scheme issues that maybe the play kind of called out Mike McCarthy, said the play calls weren't that great, that the play designs weren't good either. A lot of what Jerry said, there were some things he was wrong about, the cap, etc. Henry would still be better than what they have in Dallas too. A lot of the stuff he said wasn't wrong. The problem is, Jerry, you picked the team. If you're going to demand a title, GM, for a job that you don't actually do, you have to take responsibility at some point. You don't get to play dress-up GM and then not be accountable for the mistakes that the GM would normally try to help solve. That's what kind of annoys me to an extent, that you just don't handle things properly, that they just don't find a way to take accountability and say, you know what, that was my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. That's what's frustrating in Dallas. Now, we mentioned Lamar. I almost put Jared Goff in today's video as well, but I wanted to tweak it a little bit here. I think Goff's going to answer this question too. Who wins NFL MVP this year? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Number 7, the Chiefs are not fair. This isn't how it's supposed to be. The Chiefs' offense is not playing good football. Injuries are a huge part of that. But if I told you that a starting NFL quarterback had 6 touchdowns against 8 interceptions, you'd say, "Oh, that's not too great." Oh, he's kind of hovering down there, league average in passing yards. Okay, they're what, about 500 or worse? No, they're undefeated. Mahomes didn't play well against the Niners. Then he has that incredible run where they just don't tackle him for some reason. Blows my mind every time it happens. They keep pulling out games that I kind of don't think they should be winning. Like, we can think about the games they've played, right? They could have easily lost to the Ravens. They should have lost to the Bengals. They've got 2 games that are by non-one score margins. The Saints, which they took care of business, and the Niners that hung around for a while. They keep finding ways to win close games, and that's annoying because they're not playing well right now, and they're still undefeated. How are you going to beat them in January?